Health Matters with Monique Elliott in association with the Honey Lifestyle Network, bringing you informative information for daily living.
Welcome to Mind Health Matters. I am your host, Monique Elliott, and today we are talking about a topic that is dear to my heart, as well as I'm sure many of your hearts out there. Recently, we have lost in the community of this country, in the community, even personal victims to suicide. And I don't want to call them victims, people, human beings, persons to suicide, people that matter to all of us, the people we love. And it's so vital that we talk about this topic because it affects men and women. Before we even get started, I want you to get your writing utensils. If you're not doing it on a notepad, use your phone, take notes. We have an expert with us today. We'll both be dialoguing. This is something that I also cover when I talk to my clients because I call it the emotional thermometer. I want to share that with you today. When you get up in the morning, I want you to take your emotional thermometer. What do I mean by that? I want you to check out where your emotions are. And not only do it in the morning, but also do it sometimes throughout the day. Because there are times that you're feeling overwhelmed, or there may be times that you're feeling sad, and you need to know where you are emotionally. And that thermometer will keep you going. So what does it look like? You're just going to briefly think about 1 through 5, okay? 1 being you're low on the emotional end, meaning you're calm. There's nothing really happening. You're cool. It's all right. And then that 3 is giving you a warning. Listen, if you're getting to 3 emotionally, I need you to pay close attention because that means something may have triggered you. And if you're at 5, by then you should have called someone, take a break, do your meditations that we've talked about before, do what you need to do to bring yourself back to calm. Even if you're going to talk to a therapist or someone, this is just a step to take before we even get to the point of breaking, okay? I want you to be able to monitor and know your own thoughts and know your own feelings. Today we have a special guest with us. She is absolutely amazing. Her name is Peppy Chapman, and she is an LCSW. That means a licensed clinical social worker. She has been in this field for over 20 years, and I am ecstatic to have her. I've known her for over 20 years. We actually attended a university together. But I wanted her here because she's been in this field and she's worked with individuals. Currently, she's working with veterans. My veterans, I want to tell you how honored we are to have had you in the field who are there now, who may have been in the past. And so we're also going to address PTSD and just different elements that can affect suicide thoughts or suicidal attempts, okay? So welcome, honey. Thank you for being with me today.
And thank you. It's my pleasure.
I want to ask you, what made you get into this field of social work?
Wow. I think just always wanting to help people, in a world that we live today, people are so down and out and down, just downtrodden,
Yes.
and you just want to help someone in need.
Yes.
And that's just been
That's
my
just,
goal.
that sounds like your calling.
Yes.
Yes, sounds like part of your purpose. And so I thank you for the work you do as well.
Well, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. When we start our show, we often talk about some myths that we face with the topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of those myths you and I were even discussing is that it's not happening. Suicide is not happening on different levels, meaning your economic level, male, female. And we've discovered that it is happening across our nation. Can you give us some more information on that?
Yes, I can. And unfortunately, it happens before. They felt like just teenagers, young adults, and usually Caucasian males, 65 and older, were the ones who are committing suicide. But now it ranges, from all age groups and all races and ethnic groups.
My,
And
my.
so what's interesting is that over the last 2 decades, 30%, it's been a 30% increase
What?
over the last 2 decades. And it's the 10th leading cause of death. And so when we look at, it's been 1 million people who've tried attempting,
Dear God.
and out of the 1 million, 45,000 have succeeded.
My Lord.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Yeah. So when you look at that, just scores of people that think of the brilliance, think of all that talent,
And the pain.
Right.
Because the pain of the person that felt they couldn't go on, and then the pain of the people left.
Right.
We're talking trauma on trauma. So what were they seeing? Is this just in our country that we've lost 45,000?
In the U.S. Yes,
Just in the U.S.?
Just in the U.S. Yes, just in the U.S.
Yes.
And let me just tell you, too, that a lot of times people feel that, another myth is probably, well, you're successful, you're rich, you have a lot of money. What do you have to be sad about? You have it all. And so just because people are smiling, just because they have money, it's not going to just magically, the depression just doesn't magically disappear. And so those are folks that you really have to, look out for. And
Yes.
especially what I find too in my line of work, people who are just like comedians, like they're just comical. A lot of times they use that as coping mechanisms to kind of deflect what's going on. And it's just easy just to, try to make others happy, make others laugh, and not really be concerned about what's going on with you.
And so they're hiding it.
Yes.
They're hiding their pain.
Yes.
And we then get, I don't want to say tricked, but we overlook it because we see that they're happy, or we think they're happy.
Right.
And inside they're hurting.
We know that money does not buy happiness.
Money does not buy happiness. And it can often isolate, because sometimes people who are further away from others, meaning they're looking as if everything is okay, so they have to keep that front up. And you don't feel that you have a village, people that you can go to, because what is one of the first things they're going to say? You don't have any reason to be sad. What are you upset about? You have all this, or this and this is happening for you. Why are you upset? And not just if you have riches, but if somebody's thinking you're successful, they're looking at you saying, what are you so upset about? And often that can shut a person down, and they don't want to share it at all.
Right.
So tell me, what are some of the signs, or what are some of the things that people have said to you that lets you know maybe they may be thinking about leaving here or committing suicide?
Okay. Well, some of the warning signs, what
Yes,
you're saying,
please.
is basically, hey, I'm wanting to die, or I have a plan to kill myself. And a lot of times, especially when people have chronic pain, it's not so much that they even really want to die.
Yes.
It's just they want to get rid of the pain. So it's almost by any means necessary that if I can get rid of the pain, this pain I'm under,
Yes.
and especially a lot of people have not just one medical condition, but several. So you can imagine, day after day, having a lot of physical pain. It's like, man, I would give anything to not have this pain anymore.
My.
And so a lot of times, the suicidal ideations come about like daily, just
Yes.
because they want to escape that pain.
Yes, and let's talk about, you and I are social workers, we're in therapy, we do clinical work, but let's break down a little bit about what an ideation is. And yes, go ahead.
Yeah, those are just merely thoughts, thoughts, people have thoughts, and it's not uncommon for people to have thoughts. We just really get, when we think about, if they want to move into the planning stage, that's
Yes.
where we get very concerned. And so if they're wanting to go to the planning stage, that's why, like at our job, it's kind of like, okay, if we have to, you can't beat around the bush with suicide. You have to directly come out and ask them, you know, are you are you thinking about suicide? Do you want to kill yourself?
Yes.
And
And we have to say that. Listen, and I want to tell you this. You asking a person if they want to commit suicide is not going to make them think about committing suicide. I want that very clear. It's okay to ask a person, have you been thinking about killing yourself? Have you been thinking about causing harm to yourself? It is very important to know that you mentioning that is not going to cause a person to go do that. As a matter of fact, it's more clear because you'll be paying attention to them. They'll know you're paying attention to signs about something is happening.
and it really gives them a sigh of relief. Like, oh, okay, she's not afraid to talk about suicide.
Yeah.
She can deal with it. And so when they see that, makes them feel more comfortable and they're more likely to engage.
That's good to know. That
Yeah,
is wonderful
yeah.
to know. Yes, go
Because
ahead.
I'm sorry,
No,
something
no.
else that I wanted to say, three things that really prod people to want to commit suicide. The first thing is usually genetics. A lot of
Yes,
people are
indeed.
predisposed,
My,
to mental
my.
health characteristics and low stress tolerance. So that's another one. The second thing is past history and experience of trauma. And then thirdly, we look at early childhood abuse.
Okay. And in that abuse, does that include abandonment?
It does. It does
Okay.
include abandonment. And abandonment is something, not only somebody leaving you, but of course dying, somebody dying,
Yes.
And of course, with those situations, that's something that, you just can't deal with overnight. It
Right.
takes time. And so that's why, being in therapy is crucial, for people to process those issues.
Yes. And I want to kind of piggyback on that abandonment because abandonment happens to everyone at some point in their life, literally. And that could be a boyfriend left you or a girlfriend left you. And like you said, death, because that's something that is unavoidable in the sense of the natural course of life is people leaving us, right? And so that abandonment, we were saying, when we think about getting counseling and going to address those issues, one of the major things is to know it wasn't your fault.
Right.
It's something about knowing that some of these things were not your fault that helps you to move forward and have the courage to know if I can just get up tomorrow, that tomorrow can be a new day.
Right. And to
Mm-hmm.
know too, I'm not weak for thinking that, or I'm not flawed because I
Yes.
may have suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
So that's important to really, let them know that, hey, because you share this, I don't think that you're a freak or anything because you share this.
That's
I'm
right.
here to listen, I'm here to support. And then when you listen and support and then stay connected, that's going to be important.
Yes. So I want to ask you this. If I ask someone, and not as a therapist, but as a friend, so if I have a friend that I believe is spiraling, and if it looks like that things are happening, because we know there's some signs. One of the signs also is giving away precious items. Some people began to give away important clothing or important pictures. They start just giving away things out of the blue. And it doesn't always come in sadness. I want to make this clear too. The person who has been thinking about committing suicide with a plan, many times they're happy at the end with the sense of, hey, I've made a decision, and they began to look like they were upbeat. They looked like they were smiling. I've heard this before. They were pleasant. They just gave me some precious things. What did we do with that? How should we respond to that?
Well, that's serious. So
Uh-huh.
take that serious, Also, they're at the point that they might not get a therapist on their own. So advocate for them and help them to try to get a therapist. Also, make sure that in their home, do they have things that, whether stockpiling medication, do they have firearms and stuff, anything? Because if they have the firearms, maybe giving the firearms to a brother, that
Okay.
doesn't live in the house,
Okay.
or some other relative,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
they can keep it under lock and key. Stockpiling medications, if it's a, situation where there's a husband who's doing that, well, maybe the wife can, lock the medication up or what
Okay.
have you,
Okay.
just so they don't have it. I know when at work, when people are, suicidal, our patients are suicidal. Basically, we stop the 30-day medications and just it's 2 weeks medication
Okay.
that the pharmacy sends to them instead of 30 days
Mm-hmm.
medication.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are this, safety and protective factors. A lot of times people, you talked about, we talked about another warning sign as being isolation.
Yes.
With this COVID pandemic,
Yes.
people who are already isolated, it made
Yes.
it like 10,000 times worse,
Mm.
for people, because now they're definitely isolated. So
Yes.
if you know of someone who, is lonely,
Yes.
that has very few support systems, I would say try to check on that person, especially if they're your friend.
Yes.
Have very few support systems, because I run into people who, you know, well, for my patients, for instance, a lot of them don't have family here.
Okay.
A lot of them don't really have friends, and so coming to the therapist is the only person, literally, they have to talk to.
Yes.
And so it's just and when, they're suicidal, a lot of times if they have a plan, we usually end up, you know, putting them in inpatient,
Yes.
just
Yes.
so that, they can get that additional help and maybe get uh, their meds managed, appropriately.
Right. Right.
And so once they're in there, they can be in there anywhere from a few days until a month, just
Okay.
depending on their situation.
So what I'm looking at with that is if I have a friend that tells me they want to commit suicide, what would be the next steps? Because I'm not a therapist. I'm pretending I'm not a
Right,
therapist.
right,
I don't
yeah.
have access to all of the other things. What would be a step for me?
Well, a lot of times, like having them go to Community North or maybe taking them to Community North.
And so this is
So,
going to be national. So
right,
Community North here is
okay.
a facility, a walk-in,
A
correct?
hospital, yeah,
Yes, a
that mental,
hospital.
yeah. So, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
any place that, if you have to look in the phone book or, just kind of Google it, a
Yes.
place, kind of a behavioral, place
Or what
where they
about
can,
we would look up like a crisis line?
yeah. Or speaking of crisis line, let me just give you that phone number,
All right.
because that phone number is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. So I'm glad you brought that up, because
Thank
that's
you.
important for people to know too.
And that's national, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's definitely a
That's
national.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
That's definitely
wonderful.
a national number. So,
With that, something that has come up even in my circle is when a person comes to you and says, I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to tell anyone.
mm,
I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to tell anyone. How do we move forward with that?
oh, wow. Just letting them know, usually I can
Yes.
understand that
Yeah.
any other thing, but when it comes to you harming yourself or harming someone else,
Yes.
that has to be shared.
Yes.
Because I tell people, I saw something on Facebook that said, if suicide crosses your mind, I'd rather you listen to your story than attend your funeral.
Baby. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, just letting people know that, hey, I'm here for you. I don't care what it is.
Yes.
Just tell me.
Yes.
So, and again, this is about, I'm concerned about your safety.
Hmm.
So maybe you can be mad at me for a little while,
Yes.
but I'm concerned about you, and I'm gonna get the help you need because I love and care about you.
Yes. And I also encourage people and my clients who, if someone's in their life and is saying those things to them, if it's a good friend, to find out too, what is the community, meaning who is, here we go again, your tribe,
Right.
because that person might be willing to even say, yes, go with me to see my mom, or go with me to talk to my dad. In other words, sometimes they just want someone else to be with them, to walk with them to get help. Sometimes you're just too emotional, you're too weak to do it by yourself.
Right, right. Yeah, so I'm not saying just drop them off at the
No,
place
no,
and
yes,
that's it.
no. I
But
never
yeah,
took, yeah, I wouldn't
right.
take it like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So, and that's interesting. We talk about, safety planning, but before I go into that, a lot of times protective factors.
okay,
If you ask people, what's your protective factor for not doing that or for not going through with the plan, most people say it's because of my kids, you
mm,
know, that I wouldn't do that,
yes,
and then another thing is their faith in God.
yes, yes,
They say God created me and I know He wouldn't want me to kill myself.
yes,
He gave me life, so who am I to take it?
yes,
And so that's a lot of times. So, you like to hear that people, I'm like, oh, I'm loving hearing that, that
yes,
you care
yes,
about that.
yes,
But yeah, so that's, basically, yeah. But a lot of times, though, we try to tell people, hey, reach out because, just like you would if something's wrong physically,
mm-hmm,
you would go to the doctor. If you
yes,
had like foot pain or,
right,
something's wrong with your arm or whatever. So you need to, just like you go to the doctor for physical pain,
yes,
hey, go to a mental health professional to talk about your mental pain.
absolutely.
And so, and again, it's still a lot of stigma,
Let's
for
talk
people.
about that.
Mhm,
Yes, yes, the stigma of getting counseling,
mhm,
the stigma of going to somebody, especially if you're a man. And so part of this stigma and the myth is that I don't need to go to anybody because I can handle all this by myself. It's not even necessary. What I'm saying is, it's okay if you can handle it by yourself, but it's not necessary. You can come to someone for counseling. You can, I advise, even if you give them one time, just give them a try. At least you would have tried. And if that is not a good fit for you, there are other counselors there. There are other therapists that you can go to.
right, right. And what I liked, Dr. Doreen Marshall said, as far as, we were talking about getting help, and how people go and get help from their doctor for physical pain. And
Yes.
so I like the way she said, get a checkup from the neck up.
Come on now.
Yeah. And so that was, to me, that was powerful,
Very.
because people need to know that it's okay, and I think more and more people are seeing that, I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
because more people are telling me that, hey, I didn't want to go do therapy at first because people would think I'm crazy and I don't want them to really view me as that.
They didn't want a label placed on them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
But there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
Nothing whatsoever. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me today.
You're quite
Thank you for
welcome.
being on this show. This is not an easy topic. There are many people who don't want to discuss it at their tables, but it is important. And I'm talking about from your young age, because we have young people committing suicide, all the way to your elderly. And so no one is exempt from emotional pain. No one is exempt. We have bullying at our schools. There are different things that are happening on our social media platforms that are causing people to start thinking thoughts as far as they don't feel they measure up, or someone is bullying them on social media. So we have different platforms, or they're feeling hopeless. Listen, there is a place that you can go. I want you to call that crisis line if you have to. I want you here. I want you alive. I want you sharing your gifts with the world. And you know what? It's okay to take an emotional break, meaning if you need to sit down and just retreat for a bit. But I want you to tell somebody that you're hurting. I want you to tell somebody if you've been thinking about killing yourself. I want you to reach out to someone. And most of all, I want you to know that you were created again for greatness. Thank you for being with us today. Share this episode with someone. Use the crisis line. Call a counselor. You can go online and even just Google counselors. It's all over the internet now. And thank you for joining us on Mind Health Matters.